This is your Cosmic Briefing, a short clip from the Urantia Book for Dummies. Please, stand by.
Chapter 2, Civilization in Crisis, Section 3b. The poet, artist, and musician Leonard Cohen wrote the following words: "The blizzard of the world has crossed the threshold and has overturned the order of the soul." My mother often told us of how they would tie a tight rope from the back door of the house to the barn at the first sign of a blizzard to act as a guide when a whiteout would hit. They'd had friends and neighbors who had wandered off and been frozen to death, having lost sight of home in a whiteout while still right in their own backyards. The Urantia book in paper 100, section 5, tells us these words: "The world is filled with lost souls, not lost in a theological sense, but lost in the directional meaning, wandering about in the confusion of the isms and cults of a frustrated philosophic era." We are investigating this transition to the next stage forward in the spiral of evolutionary development of consciousness, culture, and civilization, and this blizzard of complexity and confusion which has overturned so much of our world. To help us in our investigation, we are looking to this collection of 196 papers called the Urantia Book, which hundreds of thousands of readers have reported is like my mother's life-saving guideline, here to safely show us the way home, the way of purpose, meaning, and direction for both the individual as well as our collective efforts to build a society that works for everyone. In so many ways, they tell us that the Urantia book is an operator's manual for planet Earth, with a real plan to get us across to the other side of this transitional interregnum and show us the way to building a rich, full life and an equally just society, based upon the shared values that our civilization was built upon, the ideals of creating harmony out of chaos, beauty out of the still unseen potentials of nature, truth out of the new meanings and the new discoveries, and goodness out of the lived values of age upon age of trial and error experience. Some call this next period in our development the new enlightenment. Some the second axial age. The Urantia book calls this the new Renaissance. This is a Urantia Book for Dummies, Chapter 2, Civilization in Crisis, Section 3b, The Solutions, continued. So here in this section we are continuing with our investigation from Section 3a into the diagnosis of this imbalance brought on by this blizzard of the world and what is done to the order of the soul during this interval of our civilizational development called the Interregnum of wisdom. This pause right here in our spiral of evolutionary development between where we are and where we need to get to in order to progress. The new Renaissance, the next step forward in birthing a healthy and vibrant civilization that works for everyone. We are looking into the Urantia book as a tight guide rope, a pathway through this period of uncertainty. In our last section, Section 3a, we have been working on this quote in the Urantia book from paper 118. "When culture advances too fast, when material achievement outruns the evolution of wisdom, then does civilization contain within itself the seeds of retrogression, a break to slow us down. But unless buttressed by the swift augmentation of experiential wisdom, such human societies will recede from high but premature levels of attainment, and the dark ages of the interregnum of wisdom will bear witness to the inexorable restoration of that balance between self-liberty and self-control. Now, we can easily see that our material achievements have definitely outrun the evolution of wisdom. Paper 81 tells us society is the offspring of age upon age of trial and error. It is what survived the selective adjustments and readjustments in the successive stages of mankind's age-long rise from animal to human levels of planetary status. The great danger to any civilization at any one moment is the threat of breakdown during the time of transition from the established methods of the past to those new and better but untried procedures of the future. Transition is always accompanied by confusion. But here's the good news. Confusion goes before growth as well as before destruction. Urantia is now quivering on the very brink of one of the most amazing and enthralling periods of social readjustment, moral quickening, and spiritual enlightenment. Quivering on the brink. That means capable of going one way or the other, like a tightrope walker. It's a fine balancing act to bring all of the elements of such a complex planet together in a non-violent evolutionary manner. The papers tell us that civilization is a choice. We need to provide the favorable conditions for growth and to understand that to stall, to stay in this interregnum too long, is to decay. Paper 71 tells us this: economics, society, and government must evolve if they are to remain. Static conditions on an evolutionary world are indicative of decay. Only those institutions which move forward with the evolutionary stream persist. But this is also true for the individual. Static conditions of growth will cause decay. We need to provide the favorable conditions for our own growth. Putting the controversy of politics aside, we'll take care of that in Section 5 under Leadership, Politics, and Power. There is more important work of character growth. Again, the Urantia papers tell us this. Even secular education could help in this great spiritual renaissance if it would pay more attention to the work of teaching youth how to engage in life planning and character progression. The purpose of all education should be to foster and further the supreme purposes of life, the development of a majestic and well-balanced personality. We are also told that there is a right way to do this. There is a right and proper way to do a thing in the face of any potential alternative. All we need to do is to find that way in our own reflective thought stream as it pours forth from our soul to our conscious awareness. But we keep getting in our own way. In paper 130, it tells us this: the will of man is the way of man, and I think they mean all people. The sum and substance of that which the mortal chooses to be and do. Will is the deliberate choice of a self-conscious being which leads to decision conduct based on intelligent reflection. Civilization is a deliberate choice, a matter of will. Now, certainly political will, economic will, but more important than these is the will of the citizen. The word civilization comes from the word citizen. In paper 76, it says this: it is the people who make a civilization. Civilization does not make the people. Paper 99, the attainment of a high cultural civilization demands first the ideal type of citizen, and then ideal and adequate social mechanisms wherewith such a citizenry can control the economic and political institutions of such an advanced human society. So it is the quality of the citizen, the personal growth of each citizen, that we must look to first. And here's where we run into the crisis of the individual, the subject of this section. The papers tell us this: successful living is nothing more or less than the art of the mastery of dependable techniques for solving common problems. We call this a philosophy for living, which is just a fancy way of saying attitude or your worldview. The first step in the solution of any problem is to locate the difficulty, to isolate the problem, and frankly, to recognize its nature and gravity. The great mistake is that when life problems excite our profound fears, we refuse to recognize them. Likewise, when the acknowledgement of our difficulties entails reduction of long-cherished conceit, the admission of envy, or the abandonment of deep-seated prejudice, the average person prefers to cling to the old illusions of safety and to the long-cherished false beliefs of security. We humans are very good at creating a personal worldview that is filled with what the Urantia book calls our own preconceived opinions, settled ideas, and long-standing prejudices. We all have them. But in paper 160, it tells us this: only a brave person is willing honestly to admit and fearlessly to face what a sincere and logical mind discovers. We need to tell ourselves the truth about what is really going on, not as some conspiracy outside of ourselves whereby we play the fault blame game over and over and over again, but what is really going on inside our own self. To honestly admit and fearlessly face what a sincere and logical mind discovers. Henry David Thoreau, in one of his less romantic moods, famously stated, "The mass of humanity lead lives of quiet desperation, and go to the grave with their song still in them." This could also be the definition of anomie. And what is the cause of this quiet desperation? Thoreau tells us that misplaced values are the cause. We feel a void in our lives and we attempt to fill it with things like money, possessions, awards, accolades. We think these things will make us happy, and when we find out that they don't, we just keep seeking more of them anyway. And so we spend the minutiae of our lives moving around the planet searching for more and more of the same old, and not finding what we're really hungry for. Thoreau argues that the values we attach to possessions and status is misplaced. They are not the key to happiness, and they may in fact hurt more than they help. Some call this shopping therapy. Thoreau's basically right. Misplaced values contribute to the quiet desperation. But it's not the end of the story. What is missing is resignation. We lead lives of quiet desperation when we resign ourselves to dissatisfaction. Quiet desperation is the acceptance of and surrendering to the circumstances of our life. Quietly desperate lives are frustrated, passive, and apathetic. They're unfulfilled and unrealized. Often we feel like we are standing on the sidelines watching the game of life unfold before us, and we're not in it. Spectators rather than participants. Thoreau believed that within each of us is something greater, waiting to be discovered. But we have this unfortunate tendency to suppress those inner longings for some expectation that society holds as the truth of reality. And so our own personal experiences, must be mistaken. It's not easy to function outside of the expectations that society puts on us, especially when we see the value system breaking down, and we know that it is the glue that holds everything together. The path from where we are, both as an individual and as a civilization, to where we need to get to, is not an easy one to walk. It requires discrimination, determination, and a great deal of balance. The path to the next stage of development requires balance, purpose, and ability to understand your destiny. These are the same elements that the tightrope walker must have in order to maneuver from his place of origin to his destination. The tightrope walker is one of the great metaphors for our journey through life. So it's useful to demonstrate the importance of balance here in this section. The act of tightrope walking is called funambulism. But on the pathway to life, sometimes it isn't so much fun. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche used the metaphor of a tightrope walker walking between chaos and stagnation over an abyss as a metaphor for humanity in the process of transforming from the current stage of human consciousness to a more advanced stage. The Obermensch is what he called it, which means the overman or higher self, sometimes translated as the Superman or just Superman, which the Urantia book calls the superconscious human being. This symbol of the Obermensch points us to Nietzsche's notion of wholeness, what the Urantia book refers to as self-mastery, self-control, what we often refer to as self-actualization, self-overcoming, the prerequisites to wholeness, and the characteristics of the superconscious overman. The tightrope is a good analogy of quivering on the very brink, a dangerous thing. The object of the metaphor is to demonstrate the need to avoid either of two opposite bad situations, which seems to be the story of our lives. And so it requires both incredible balance and faith in the apparatus and an incredible focus on purpose to walk this tightrope of our life and to get across to the other side of building a life and building a society, attempting to bring harmony out of chaos, beauty out of potentials, truth out of meanings, and goodness out of values.
This has been a Cosmic Briefing, a short clip from the Urantia Book for Dummies. Please click the subscribe button above and then follow these links for a full presentation of this briefing. Thank you.